What is up, y'all? It's your girl Slush, creator of Slushropes. I'm a huge advocate of the rope flow practice as it not only helps us in our fitness journey, but it's also great for our mental health. If you clicked on this video, chances are you're curious about how to get over this thing that I like to call flow plateau. And today we're gonna dive deep into what I think you should know to help you get over your flow plateau. So before we continue, I hope that you can consider liking this video, maybe subscribing to my channel as it helps me put out content such as this. So first things first, let's define plateau. What is plateau? Or what does it even mean to hit a plateau? Well, it is a state of little or no change following a period of activity. It's when things start feeling flat or maybe even feeling like it makes little to zero impact on what we're doing. Plateau is something that we experience in life. So if you're experiencing that right now, I hope that you know that I'm right there with you guys. And this is not just rope flow specific. This is something that happens, to all of us and in the different departments of our lives. So, this can take place in our career jobs, or maybe you're working on a passion project, and even in our relationships, whether it's with friends, family, or our partners. In my fitness journey, I've discovered that this is a place that I find myself in over and over again. What used to be so difficult for me eventually throughout time becomes a little bit too easy or too familiar, to say the least. So why do we hit a plateau in the first place? There are several reasons why we may hit a plateau in our fitness or flow journey. And I'm going to cover just 3 reasons you may be experiencing a plateau. So number 1, it's just lack of variety. If we do the same thing over and over again, same routine, our body just adapts to what we're doing and it stops making progress. It's very important that we switch up our routine every few weeks to keep challenging our muscles and even prevent boredom in general. This is something, if I'm being honest with you guys, this is something that I'm very guilty of as well. Recently I actually had to go back to the 24-hour fitness by my house. In the last 2 years, I didn't really have a reason to go back to a public gym, and that's because I do have my personal gym with all my flow toys, right there available for me to use. The reason why I went back to 24 is because I wanted to kind of just get out of my routine. I wanted to do something new, something fresh, and also put myself outside of my comfort zone. This is probably something that's going to resonate with my other flow me's out there. So if you love flow and you work out primarily under the flow umbrella, you'd probably know what I mean when I say sometimes you just kind of get stuck. And by stuck, I mean I would start with rope flow and then 2 hours would pass, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh hey, I gotta go to work, and I didn't really have time to do any other type of training. So the second reason why you may be hitting a plateau is probably due to insufficient intensity or volume. So if you're working out but you're not working hard enough, and sometimes this looks like not enough reps or sets. So by increasing the intensity or the volume of your workout, you can really help yourself push past your plateau. And the third reason for plateau is simply overtraining. While it's important to challenge ourselves, during our workouts, it's also important to give ourselves, like our body, enough time to recover. If we're working out too often or too intensely, our body may not even have enough time to repair and build muscle. And so this as well, overtraining can lead you to getting into plateau. And of course, there are many other reasons why we may hit a plateau, but I know you're here today watching this video specifically to dive deep with me when it comes to conquering and overcoming our flow plateau. Specifically in rope flow, I'm not gonna lie, I find myself often plateauing, and today I'm gonna give you guys 10 tips that's helped me out, and hopefully you find tips that work for you. These are tips that has worked for me, and I hope that you find little bits and pieces that would help you get unstuck. And by the way, in this list, I've combined rope flow specific tips and in combination of general plateau. By no means is this in order of importance, so take what you want and leave what you don't. Also, make sure to stay tuned for number 10 because that one is my personal favorite. Tip number 1, stop watching rope flow content. Yeah, so I said that, and I know that this might go against everything that we know, but just hang tight. I do feel like I can explain this in a way that would add value to your journey. So let's first start out with the fact that social media is no longer what it used to be. In fact, it's so far from what it used to be. Back in the day, we saw 1, exactly what we subscribe to, and 2, who we subscribe to. I'm talking about seeing our friends, what they're up to in real time. I don't know if you remember that, but nowadays the algorithm feeds us the food or the content that it thinks we want to see, in combination of the accounts, subjects, or hashtags that we engage with the most. So let's start there. So what I'm about to say may turn heads, but I'll say it regardless. I would routinely follow and unfollow certain accounts or hashtags on my social media, and I'm not telling you to unfollow everyone, but there is value in what I'm about to explain. If you're running your social media as a personal page, I want you to think about the amount of people that you follow but add 0 value in your life. So in fact, you might even be following people or accounts that may make you feel bad about your journey, about yourself. And so the good news about all of this is that it's, at the end of the day, it's a choice that we are making and that we can continue to make. I recognize that from an outsider's perspective, maybe even you watching this video, that this can seem very harsh. I'm diving deep on social media first before I kind of go into this advice, just because it's so important that we have a baseline of, social media in general and what it does to us compared to 10 years ago. When people ask why I would follow or unfollow accounts, I always say that this is my way of being selective with the food or the content that I feed my mind. Since I'm only human, I do get burnt out of the same type of content, thrown in my face over and over again. So from time to time, I would unfollow certain accounts or hashtags to re-manipulate or remix, what I see on my screen. By doing this, it allows me to freshen my mind once again, and sometimes we do have to put that space and that gap so that we can explore, by ourselves a little bit more. So by desensitizing yourself from consuming rope flow content, you're actually empowering yourself to embark on your own journey, inspired from your own explorations. So at least that's one way that I see it. For a very long time, I actually didn't follow any rope flow accounts with the exceptions of Flomies or friends that I personally knew. The reason for this is very simple. I feel that if I'm just watching hundreds of people give tutorials, I kind of get stuck, learning from another person rather than learning from my own experience. And this is not to say that, learning from other people is bad or that it doesn't help you grow. That's not what I'm saying. But there is definitely value in learning through exploration and from your own learning process. It's super important that we recognize that we all learn and download information differently. So this is also why I said in the beginning of the video, take what you want and leave what you don't. In my personal experience, I detox from rope flow content from time to time, and that starts with my social media. I'm not saying to stop watching rope flow content altogether. What I'm saying is just give yourself a little break, because you'd be surprised what some rest and space can do. And this is something we'll talk about a little bit more on advice number 4. On to the next advice. So advice number 2, watch more rope flow content and be a student of life. So you probably didn't see that one coming. So that kind of just goes against my first advice, which is kind of funny, but this is just as valuable. In my experience with rope flow, I've come to a place where I have a general understanding of the modality that I can, for the most part, get myself to learn and comprehend any pattern, whether it be super new or super complicated. And by no way am I saying, it's not challenging, because believe me, it's not always easy for me to learn things or download a pattern internally, but because I have a solid foundation, that I've built throughout time, I'm able to navigate through any new pattern that I might be learning. I share this with you because this is something that I've been going through recently. This is something that's actually my most recent plateau. I found myself in a place where I felt like things were just so boring for me. Not to say that I could do everything, but also at the same time, I wasn't really growing my flow vocabulary that much. I wasn't feeding my mind anything that could add value to my practice. This is when I realized that I needed to get back on my seat and put on my student hat. This happens to the best of us, especially if you're an expert in your career. Sometimes we forget that there's always more to learn. But what I find is that when we have a student mindset, our eagerness to learn takes us to our next steps. This, of course, isn't always the most comfortable route, since it requires learning, and not only learning information, but learning new information. It takes time, but I don't know, what doesn't take time? When we have that mindset, growth is always just right around the corner. Advice number 3, variety is key. So this is kind of like a flow refresher, and this advice is not only rope flow specific, but also applies in life. Everything is fun, in the beginning, whatever that is, whether it's rope flow or you found something new, dancing, whatever, right? And so things are always fun in the beginning until it starts progressing, and then it starts to feel like autopilot. And I know for me, this is something that I've been working on for some time now. And as humans, we need variety. We really do. And that's what keeps things very exciting and very new. So if you're in your rope flow journey and you may hit a small bump in the road where, I don't know, the magic may not feel as electric as it used to be, know that that's normal. But our job is to keep that magic alive. The best way I spark magic is by just trying out new things, or spend time primarily on other modalities instead of rope flow. This advice, I will admit, is probably the most difficult to take, because even for me, when I work out, I tend to start with rope flow and end with rope flow. And generally speaking, I plan on incorporating strength training and all of that, but I just kind of get stuck. That's usually what I would do 99% of my time. So whenever I need to freshen things up, I go to a different modality or type of training first before I flow. And this is just one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is by incorporating something else, like an accessory with your rope flow. So it could look like, I don't know, your flow rope and a Bosu ball, right? Just adding accessories and keeping things new and fresh. Advice number 4, stop comparison. Everyone's journey is different, and if you feel like you're not progressing enough or fast enough, I want you to ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you're truly feeling that way, and then maybe ask yourself, where's this even coming from? Comparison is the thief of joy, and it can ruin what's beautiful or what's growing right in front of our face. So understand that when we compare ourselves to others, we're actually just robbing ourselves of the opportunity to experience joy. And if there's one thing that I hope that sticks with you in this entire video, I hope that it's that. You know, this advice is usually, at least in my experience, usually easier said than done. And when I temporarily stop consuming rope flow content, I'm able to kind of position myself in a way where I don't even expose myself, you know, to the possibility of comparing myself. And this is not to say like by not watching a certain type of content that you just won't feel that way. I'm not saying that, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't help. One of my favorite quotes that gets me going when I get stuck in comparison is the quote, "The grass is greener where you water it." So there you go. Water the grass that you wish to be greener. Advice number 5, revisit your basics and appreciate it. Remember how we talked about being a student of life? Well, let's unpeel that once more and go back 2 steps. Revisiting our basic rope flow patterns and appreciating them can lead us to see the bigger picture. Think about it this way. The alphabet has a limit. It has a ceiling. There's no more new alphabets that's being added. So think of that as our basic rope flow patterns. So if I asked you to write about your day or to write lyrics, you know, for an original song, chances are you're going to come up with something original, something that's never been written before. Our flow journey shows us how to create expressions by using the alphabets, right? The basic patterns that we can weave or write and put it together in a flow. And so there's no ceiling or limits to this, unlike the alphabets. So next time you're feeling like you're plateauing, go back to your basics and appreciate it. After all, it deserves more credit. Advice number 6, just stop. Just stop it. So this advice can be taken in whatever capacity makes sense for you. Again, take what you want, leave what you don't. Sometimes detoxing from rope flow content isn't enough, and in my experience, taking a break from rope flow as a whole can also be very beneficial. You know, this can look like 2 days, it could look like 3 weeks, or for however long you think you need. I mentioned this earlier, but we need to create some space at times, and that space and gap is what's going to allow us to have room for growth, like literal room for growth. Because burnout is a real thing, and it really does happen to the best of us, you know. So not even rope flow specific, but just more so in life. We get burnt out, it happens, and no one's exempted from it. And if you see other people who look like they don't get burnt out, chances are they're just better at putting variety in their life. So if you're feeling burnt out, allow yourself to feel that way, allow yourself to miss it, and then come back whenever you're ready. All right, advice number 7, break your habits. This advice is similar to number 3, but a little bit more specific. When we hit plateau, it's because we're on autopilot. And in order to bring in variety, we have to push ourselves out of the flow plateau. And we do this by breaking our habits. So sometimes we're just too predictable, you know, some things are just, like our body just knows, right? Our body just knows. Some super easy ways to break our habits is simply by changing up our routine. And to be more specific, you know, if you listen to music when you work out, change the type of genre that you typically listen to. By doing this, I mean, this requires no skill. By doing this, you're immediately changing up the vibe, like just immediately. So try that. You know, that's something very easy to do. And something recent that I actually have been doing is working out without music. I never thought I'd ever say that, but I have been working out without music, and it's given me a different experience. I was actually on the Stairmaster the other day for like, I think 20 or 30 minutes without any music, and I really thought I wasn't going to make it, but you know, funny enough, I was actually able to concentrate more. Another way you can break your habit is changing up the environment. So if you work out indoors like the gym, try the park. And if you usually work out at night, try working out in the morning. The other way that I break my habit that I think could work for you is changing the order of when rope flow happens in your workout. So I am super guilty of this. I feel like I mentioned this in the entirety of the video, but I hacked my workout a little bit and put rope flow at the end, almost like it's a prize or like a treat. So when I do this, in my routine, it does take a lot of intentional effort to not pick up the rope. I think that is like the biggest challenge, to not start with rope flow or to not do rope flow in the middle of my workout. I usually just leave it at the very end. And I don't know, like for me, when I do this, I just get super fired up, like super excited, because in the last hour maybe I've done the work that maybe I didn't really want to do, whether that's like Stairmaster or doing some strength training, whatever that looks like. And by the end of it, I have like this thing that I get to reward myself with, which is rope flow. So by doing this, I'm not only just adding variety in my training, but I also get to start my rope flow practice when I'm feeling high levels of dopamine. So in other words, by the time I flow, I'm already like in a great mood and I'm super, super excited. Advice number 8, give yourself some credit. You aren't where you used to be. This is simple, but perhaps not always easy for us to do. The self-talk we give ourselves is so crucial to how we embody the wins and the lessons that we learn along the way. This could be rope flow specific or just life in general. But on advice number 6, I talked about stopping, and feeling burnt out. So when we stop, we give ourselves the space to appreciate our journey and how far we've come. Like we can actually just stop and look or think about how far we've come. And sure, we aren't where we want to be. Like, let's just be real. We always just want more. We want to achieve more, and that is completely normal. But if you're proactive in your journey, I can say that you are most likely not where you used to be. Advice number 9, unsubscribing to limiting beliefs. This is another rope flow specific or life in general advice. Limiting beliefs are thoughts and reasons or just narratives that we've created for ourselves as to why we can't be this or have that. By unsubscribing to limiting beliefs, we open up countless doors for opportunities and growth. When I first started out my rope flow journey, I had the hardest time with the cheetah tail. Like, this is one of the most difficult patterns I've ever had to learn in my lifetime. And I used to think that I'll never get it, just because of how difficult it was. But eventually I unsubscribed to that belief. The cheetah tail is something that can be very, very challenging for a lot of people, especially if you have limited mobility. And in fact, I feel like one way to test out someone's mobility is by having them learn the cheetah tail. But as I practiced rope flow more, throughout the years, my mobility naturally just got better within time. So fast forward to today, it's a pattern that I don't even think about. The cheetah tail is something that can be very, very challenging for people, especially if you have limited mobility. And in fact, I would even say that if you want to see someone's mobility, have them learn the cheetah tail. Some people can just pick it up just like that. They have the mobility for it. But for me, I know for a fact, like, it probably took me an entire year to even get close to, maybe 5 clean reps. But as I practiced rope flow more, my mobility naturally got better within time. So if anything, I do encourage you to unsubscribe to the stories that you tell yourself as to why you can't do something. Just unsubscribe to that. If anything, subscribe to my channel. Advice number 10, and this one is my favorite, the 10-minute rule. This last advice is last for a reason. This is usually what fixes things first, or at least in my experience, this is what has worked well for me. The 10-minute rule is something that I incorporate whenever I feel like the flow plateau flu is creeping up on me. And for the most part, I get to skip the parts of needing to take all the other advice that we talked about in this video by just doing this. I allow myself of zero judgment on my first 10 minutes of flowing without putting down the rope. This means I don't analyze any of my techniques, I don't think, nor do I even do anything crazy like tricks or releases. I literally just do whatever I want, and I am completely present in that moment. In my experience, the first 10-minute window from when I start flowing is usually the crucial path to flow state. And I find that when we start without judgment, the comparison stops and the exploration begins. And through exploration, we find ways to do things, and this leads to variety. And with variety, we excite ourselves once more, and this can be the reason why we break the habit of being on autopilot. I hope that you found some insight with these tips, and I wish you the best on your rope flow journey. If you're in your flow plateau, I know it's hard, but hey, you know what? It's not impossible. Let me know which advice or tips you really liked or not liked. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys soon.